welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're looking at a potential clash between the UK and the US.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
Yeah, it involves big tech, free speech, and, well, a whole lot of controversy. We're diving into the UK's Online Safety Act.
Right. The one aimed at making the internet safer in the UK.
Exactly, especially for kids.
But there's pushback.
Oh, yeah.
Some are saying it'll stifle free speech and that it'll hurt American tech companies.
Including the Trump administration.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? The role someone like Elon Musk is playing in all this.
Oh, yeah. Talk about a storyline ripped from the headlines.
Like a tech billionaire influencing global politics. It's wild.
I know.
Yeah.
And get this, congressional sources are saying that Musk's been encouraging Trump to bring up this Online Safety Act in trade talks with the UK.
Wow.
I know. And there are even reports that some of the Trump administration are calling the act Orwellian.
Yeah.
So it could be a major sticking point.
To really understand Musk's position, though, you got to look at what he's been doing. Okay, so like what?
Well, he's been super vocal against the Online Safety Act.
Especially on X.
Oh, yeah, especially there. He's even advocated for the release of Tommy Robinson.
Who's that?
He's a far-right activist who was jailed in the UK for contempt of court.
Huh, okay.
Musk's tied this case to his concerns about free speech restrictions in the UK.
So he's saying Robinson's imprisonment is, like, the government going too far?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so Musk definitely has some strong opinions here.
He does.
But is it all about free speech? Or is there something more here?
It's a good question. And while Musk says it's about free speech, some say his reasons might be a little more complicated.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, they say the Online Safety Act could affect how platforms like X operate.
Oh, how so?
Well, it makes companies take more action to remove harmful content, things like hate speech and cyberbullying.
So more content moderation.
Yeah, and that could mean less user engagement and, well, less revenue.
Ah, so maybe Musk's opposition is partly because of how it could affect his business?
Exactly, and this is where it gets even more interesting. Don't forget Mark Zuckerberg.
Right, he was at Trump's inauguration, too.
Just like Musk. And both seem to be trying to get the president's attention.
Trying to use their influence.
Yeah, to shape policy, not just in the U.S., but globally.
It's kind of crazy to think these tech leaders could sway trade deals and laws of other countries.
It is?
So how does the Online Safety Act fit into all of this? What's got the Trump administration's attention?
Well, the act's critics, some of the U.S., are saying it could really hurt free speech online.
What are they pointing to?
Parts that say platforms have to watch for and remove content that could be harmful, even if it's not illegal.
So they're worried about censorship, companies being too cautious and removing stuff that's maybe controversial but protected.
Exactly. And the act gives the UK government a lot of power to enforce these rules. Like big fines for companies that don't follow the rules.
So the worry is that U.S. tech companies might not want to operate in the UK.
Right, and that could hurt innovation and the economy.
It sounds like there are some valid concerns about the act's impact on free speech and the tech industry.
There are.
But isn't there also a good argument for regulating online spaces, to protect people?
Oh, absolutely, and that's what makes this whole debate so complicated. Because there's no question that online platforms can be used to spread harmful content.
To incite violence.
And to exploit people.
Yeah.
The UK government and the ACT supporters say regulation is needed to deal with these problems and to protect people, especially children.
So it's about finding that balance between free expression and protecting people online.
Exactly. Where do you draw the line?
It's a tough one, and it seems like policymakers, tech companies, everyone's wrestling with this.
They are.
Wow, this is shaping up to be a really interesting deep dive.
It is.
We've got tech giants talking to presidents, trade deals up in the air, and this huge debate about free speech online, what's not to love. Let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll look closer at what this could all mean for trade and see how the UK is handling all this pressure. Okay, so we're back, and we were talking about how the UK's Online Safety Act is causing a stir with possible trade issues and with big names like Elon Musk getting involved. But how could this actually affect trade between the US and the UK?
Well, some experts are saying this Online Safety Act could become a big problem for a U.S.-UK trade deal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Andrew Hale from the Heritage Foundation called it a roadblock.
And
it's a conservative think tank.
Okay, yeah.
And he's saying it's not fair for American tech companies.
Yeah, that makes sense. If U.S. companies feel like they're being targeted or put at a disadvantage by this act, it could cause some tension when they're trying to negotiate trade deals.
For sure. And this is where things get really interesting politically. Lord Young of Acton, a British peer, said there could be a big showdown between Musk, Zuckerberg, and the UK government, with Trump backing up the tech guys.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine? It'd be like a clash of the titans for real.
It would.
This is almost hard to believe that it's actually happening. But let's take a step back for a sec. What if the UK gives in to pressure from the US and weakens the Online Safety Act? What would that mean for online safety and free speech in the UK?
That's a really important question, and it goes to the core of what we're talking about here. You know, on the one hand, you've got the argument that strong rules are necessary to keep people safe online.
Especially kids.
Right, from harassment and abuse and all that.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that the UK has always been a bit more cautious about free speech than the US, especially when it comes to things like hate speech.
Right.
So there's a different cultural and legal context at play here.
Definitely. And this difference in how they approach things is reflected in the Online Safety Act itself.
Yeah.
And we've said it aims to make the internet safer, but there are those worries about censorship and limits on free expression.
Yeah. It sounds like the UK is in a tough spot. They want to protect their people online, but they also want to keep those good trade relationships with the US. And then you've got these powerful figures like Musk and Zuckerberg just throwing more fuel on the fire.
It's a complicated situation. There are no easy answers. And to make things even more complex, you have to factor in the UK's own political landscape.
Oh, right, because...
Well, if they water down the Online Safety Act, it would probably cause a huge backlash from Labour MPs.
Because...
They campaigned on making these regulations stronger.
That's right, and this act was passed under a Conservative government.
Right.
Which shows there's support for stronger online safety from both sides in the UK.
There is.
So any attempt to weaken the act would be a challenge politically.
It would. It's a balancing act for sure, and it'll be interesting to see how the UK manages all this pressure. But beyond the immediate political and economic consequences, there's this bigger question about what role tech giants play in shaping global policy.
I was just thinking about that. It's kind of fascinating and kind of scary to see how people like Musk and Zuckerberg are using their influence on the world stage.
It raises some really big questions about accountability and democracy. Are we okay with unelected tech leaders having this much impact on international issues, especially things like free speech and online rules?
That's a great question, and it makes me wonder, what does all this mean for the average person online, someone like you listening right now? How could this power struggle between governments and tech companies affect your experience online?
Well, think about it this way. What happens here could change the internet as we know it. It could affect what you see and share online, what's considered harmful or okay, and even how you talk to others online.
So this isn't just some abstract political debate. It has real consequences for how we communicate and get information and connect with each other online.
It does, and it highlights how important it is to be aware of these issues, to talk about them, and to hold both governments and tech companies accountable for the choices they make that shape our digital lives.
Well said. This deep dive has definitely shown me just how complex all this is. We've got free speech advocates clashing with safety advocates, tech giants, lobbying governments, and international trade deals on the line. It's a lot to take in. It feels like we're at a real turning point here, wanting a free and open internet where ideas can be shared, but also realizing how much harm can happen online and that we need more accountability.
Yeah, it's a tension that's not going away. And as technology keeps changing, these challenges are only going to get tougher.
So what do we do? What can we do as individuals to deal with this and make sure the internet is a good thing in our lives?
It's the question we all have to ask. I think it begins with awareness. We have to understand what's at stake, the different viewpoints, and what could happen depending on what decisions are made.
And it's not enough to just listen and learn. We need to be part of the conversation, talk to our leaders, voice our concerns to these tech companies, and hold everyone responsible for making a digital world that reflects our values.
Exactly. We can't just sit back. The internet's such a big part of our lives. We can't just leave these decisions to a few powerful people or governments.
It's up to us to shape the future of the internet, and that starts with being informed, being involved, and speaking up for what we believe in. This deep dive has really taken us through this complicated world of online safety, international politics, and the influence of these big tech companies.
And while there aren't any easy answers, I think we can all agree that the stakes are really high. What's decided today will have a big impact for years to come, shaping the internet and our lives in huge ways.
It really makes you think. But before we go, I want to leave you with this as you're online. Remember, you have a voice. Use it. Talk to people. Challenge ideas and demand better from those in charge. The future of the internet depends on it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time when we explore more of the forces shaping our world.